Coming up on Lawmakers, the second session of the 148th Georgia General Assembly begins under the Gold Dome. Georgia's leaders talk about their legislative priorities and a preview of some issues expected to inspire debate. Those stories and more are coming up next.
This is Lawmakers, your source for all the news from under the Gold Dome. Here are your anchors, Gerald, Bryant, and Nwandi Lawson.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Georgia Public Broadcasting's 36th year of legislative coverage. I'm Gerald Bryant.
And I'm Nwandi Lawson. The second session of the 2005-2006 session was, in fact, gaveled in today. And, of course, legislators lost no time in sharing their expectations for this year.
In fact, Governor Sonny Perdue got a head start at a news conference last week when he talked about his legislative priorities.
Monday, when we convene, my floor leaders will introduce a bill that calls for 65% of educational funding at state, local, and federal to be expended in the classroom. Now, there's a national group that makes the determination about what's eligible for classroom spending and what's not, and we're going to go by those standards. We're not going to try to cheat or quibble or anything about this ought to be in or this ought to be out. They're already identified out there, and we're going to go by those rules.
The state's largest teachers group, the Professional Association of Georgia Educators, says that blanket adoption of U.S. Department of Education standards may not meet local needs.
When you're in a school setting, in a school system setting, you have to be concerned about the daily activities that go on within that school and within that school setting.
According to Page, the governor's plan does not eliminate gaps in education funding, which began with cuts made in 1997.
The last QBE study committee reflected that public education in Georgia was underfunded by approximately $870 million. This is not a Democrat or Republican issue. At that time, the Democrats were in charge, the governor, the House, and Senate. Today, that underfunding is close to $1.4 billion estimated.
The governor's plan would require local systems to spend 65% of operating budgets on classroom costs, including teachers' salaries and textbooks, but excluding media specialists, guidance counselors, and principals. The Georgia Association of Educators says teachers would be better served by lowering class sizes.
We know that we're held to a high standard of accountability, and we welcome that. But we also would like to have those things in place that help us function better. And lower class sizes is one of those things.
And since the governor has named kids and jobs as his top priorities for this legislative session, he is designating 72% of the state's new revenue to education, including that bill that was introduced today that would require school systems to spend 65% of their operating budgets on classroom education. The governor's plan also provides an exemption from that 65% funding ratio for systems that do exceed academic standards. And the governor is also going to push for a constitutional amendment requiring that lottery funds be used solely for pre-K and pre-K programs and Hope scholarships.
And speaking of the budget, the General Assembly is hoping to have more input into the budget process this year. Senate Appropriations Chairman Jack Hill said he'd like to see lawmakers not just appropriating money, but seeing if that money is being spent effectively.
I think we're moving in that direction. Something called program budgeting, and you can call it whatever you want. It has more to do with determining how we're going to budget funds, determining what the goals of a particular program ought to be, appropriating those funds, and then measuring the outcome, trying to measure whether we're succeeding or not. We do some things very well in Georgia, and I think we want to continue doing them, but anything not examined just sometimes tends to not be performing as well as it should.
Well, with revenue collections and estimates trending up, there will be some more money to spend in this year's state budget. As we just reported, Governor Perdue wants a lot of that to go to education, but there will also be spending on health care.
We've lowered the scope or the slope on the health care cost. It was at an unsustainable level, and we've lowered that slope to a more sustainable level without cutting benefits in the Medicaid area, and that's the good news. We still have some challenges in the state health benefit plan to lower those, but we've got proposals ongoing to do that. And a healthy portion goes to a healthy Georgia. That's health care increases just for population growth and new enrollees.
And Lieutenant Governor Mark Taylor would also like to see more spending on health care. Today, the Lieutenant Governor proposed a brand new health insurance program for Georgia's children.
Now it's time to provide health insurance to every child in Georgia. Every single one. All of them. Regardless of who they are, who their parents are, where they live, or their income. Under the plan I put forward today, if any Georgia child, lacks health insurance, the state of Georgia will help make it affordable.
And under the Lieutenant Governor's proposal, there would be no caps for family incomes, although co-pays would be based on the family income. And he says that the measure is aimed at benefiting hard-working families who make a little bit too much money to qualify for existing government health programs. He was asked how many children would benefit from the program.
Almost 100,000 kids right now in Georgia are not eligible for Medicaid and not eligible for Peach Care. I really believe that in the first year of this program, that this can be implemented for about $12 million. But to be honest, I believe when this is fully implemented, that the program will be about $50 million a year. Right now, we spend $67 million on Peach Care. So the ultimate cost, when fully implemented, I believe, will be less than Peach Care.
Now, a spokesman for the governor's office says that the lieutenant governor's proposal is purely political and that the cost would be much higher than he anticipates. According to that spokesman, the lieutenant governor should explain how the state could pay for the insurance plan without raising taxes or cutting education spending.
Well, many Capitol observers agree that immigration issues will be hotly debated under the Gold Dome this season. Several bills dealing with the issue did not make it through last year. There'll be more of a priority this year, according to Republican leaders in the Senate. Lawmakers Jesse Freeman is standing by live at the Capitol with more on that story. Jesse.
Well, Gerald, Senate Bill 170 would require certain government agencies to pay close attention to the services they provide to make sure that no illegal residents are receiving those services. One portion of the bill that relates to access to higher education has infuriated some other senators. Georgia is becoming an international state with an increasingly diverse workforce. Immigration issues may be a hot topic this session, and Senator Chip Rogers has a bill that would limit access to public services for undocumented residents.
Senate Bill 170 is really being put in place so that we document and verify that any person who is claiming that they are legally eligible to receive these benefits, in fact, is legally eligible. But
Senators Sam Zamarripa and Tim Golden, both Democrats, say there are provisions in the bill that could possibly interfere with the power of the Board of Regents.
From time to time, you'll see legislation that sometimes unintentionally crosses over into a gray area. Senate Bill 170 does so when it comes to the Board of Regents, in my opinion.
The regents are in the Georgia Constitution, that they will be an autonomous body, that they will be self-governing.
Rogers says his bill is in line with federal law.
They're suggesting that Senate Bill 170 impacts a regent's decision. I don't believe it impacts a regent's decision unless a regent is making a decision outside the boundaries of federal law.
Rogers says he's willing to work with Zamarripa and Golden as the issue moves forward, and they seem to feel the same way.
What little we can do on immigration to crack down on fraud, we need to do it, and I would support that effort, minus bringing the regents into it.
In the Senate, it's all right to disagree, but it's not all right to not communicate.
Now, Senator Zamarripa acknowledged that he does have some other issues with the bill, mostly about how violations are reported, but his major issue was with access to higher education. Senate Bill 170 and other immigration-themed bills will be played out in discussions here on the Senate floor. We at Lawmakers will keep you updated on this and all issues throughout the 2006 session. Reporting live, I'm Jesse Freeman for Lawmakers.
Thank you very much for that report, Jesse.
Meanwhile, the House Governmental Affairs Committee gave a due pass to legislation that requires certain types of photo ID in order to vote. A similar piece of legislation passed the General Assembly last year, but a U.S. District Court judge said the bill was a violation of state and federal constitutions. Lawmakers David Zelski joins us live with the current status of Senate Bill 84. David.
Well, Nwandi, the bill's sponsor, Senator Cecil Staten, believes the House committee substitute to the bill should be all it needs to please the judge. The substitute to Senate Bill 84 offers a free service for voter ID cards in each Georgia county as long as a registered voter has proof of their date of birth.
We believe that between $1,000 and $1,200, no more than $1,400 per location with 159 counties, you're looking at less than $200,000. That's a lot of money, but to me, the integrity of our elections in Georgia is well worth it. It's a good investment because, after all this bill really ultimately says is that when you come to vote, be prepared to show us that you are who you say you are, just like you have to do to get a medical procedure, to rent a video at Blockbuster, or to walk into a Sam's Club. Show us you are who you say you are, and bring a photo ID.
You currently have some type of identification that is been used so that anyone who wants to vote and is a valid voter can still go vote. But the bill before and what this would still restrict in some way that access. And if that's the case, we feel like it remains unconstitutional.
Representative Alicia Thomas Morgan and some other opponents believe this kind of bill is not a necessity and may have other intentions.
In the Georgia Constitution and our U.S. Constitution, it says you have to be 18 years old and a U.S. citizen in order to vote in this country. It doesn't say you have to have a particular photo ID. It does not say that you have to live in a certain neighborhood or go to a certain institution. I also believe that this is about protecting their majority. And I believe that if Republicans are so interested in morals and values and being people of faith, then they ought to talk about the issues. And those ought to be the things that bring people to the polls, not locking people out from the political process.
It's common sense. It secures the ballot box. And candidly, after the session was over, I've seen 3 or 4 polls done by newspapers and news outfits that show that 80–85% of Georgians support that. Everywhere I've been in the state session speaking and meeting with people, overwhelmingly they come up to us and say, that's a good idea. That's a great idea.
Now, House Majority Leader Jerry Keene and other supporters of the bill believe these new measures are necessary to help prevent voter fraud. However, Maggie Garrett of the ACLU says there have been no recorded instances of voter fraud at the polls. Reporting live, I'm David Zelski for Lawmakers.
Thanks for the update, David. Well, among the first orders of business in the House today was the welcoming of 2 new House members.
I would like to take just one moment of a morning order to welcome you back. It's good to be back. It's good to be back walking. Be thankful for the ability to walk and be thankful for the ability not to live in pain. Now, since we last met, we've had 2 new members to join us, and I'd like to just take a moment as Representative Ernestine Howard on the floor. Stand up and let us see you. Welcome. Welcome. We have another member, is Representative Melvin Everson on the floor. Stand up. Welcome. Welcome.
Now, Representative Ernestine Howard is the widow of Augusta legislator Henry L. Howard, who died last fall. In November, she was elected to complete his term. Snellville Representative Melvin Everson won a special election in September, becoming the 2nd African-American Republican House member. In what they say is an effort to avoid being defined by Republicans, House Democrats today announced their legislative agenda. Key items include, in the education arena, increased pay for teachers, reduction of classroom sizes, and permanent protection of the Hope Scholarship. The agenda also includes a call to allow state employees to select medical providers of their choice and for an expansion of the Peach Care program for uninsured children.
Since their policy has been in place, 75,000 children have been cut from Peach Care. Now, these are from working families who pay a premium. But the 45,000 last year plus 30 more thousand this year, 75,000 children have been cut for the 3 months for Peach Care eligibility. What that means is those children are still going to get sick. They'll have to show up at your local emergency room, and local hospitals and local governments will simply have to assume that.
Democrats are also calling on candidates to sign a pledge of support for open government. They plan to introduce a measure to extend eminent domain protection for landowners. And in the area of economic development, the House Democrats say they will work for the creation of more jobs, the election of a commissioner for economic development as well. Meanwhile, House Republicans also outlined their priorities, including gas tax relief, eminent domain legislation, and a bill to strengthen the penalty for child sexual assault.
It's a simple premise. We're going to lock them up for a long time, and when they get out, we're going to electronically monitor them for the rest of their life. And I've been asked before by many of you that says, well, I'm reading the bill. It looks like it's going to be difficult for those people to really stay in Georgia. Well, that's our intent. I hope it'll be difficult enough for them to leave and go to another state. They're coming from Florida up through Georgia now, and we want to move them out and let them go somewhere else.
Meanwhile, the Senate got underway this morning with kind words and best wishes typical, at least on the first day.
As your president, as your lieutenant governor, I want each and every one of y'all to succeed. I want each and every one of y'all to be back here next year in the capacity that you would like to be back. Whether that is a member of the state Senate or in some other high public office. I want the very best for y'all, and I thank you sincerely for your service. I thank you for the courtesies to me and to my family. I thank you for the courtesies to your office of Lieutenant Governor. Welcome. Let's have a great session. Thank you. Thank you very much.
As we move forward with the session, we hopefully to move fast. I know we all have business to get back to, and the people benefit from a short, fast session. I hope that we'll apply the tattoo test to legislation this year. We don't always want to do something because it's a fad or just on the whim of a moment. We need to think of what it's going to look like 30, 40, and 50 years from now. So keep the tattoo test in mind as we consider legislation.
Meanwhile, Republican legislation cutting the sales tax on natural gas and propane has already been filed. That was first done by executive order, and now Senate Republican leaders will push to put the cuts into law.
Probably the first order of business is just ratifying the governor's natural gas and liquid propane bill, which cuts that tax in half. I don't know how many legislatures and governors across the state call a special session to give money back or to start a session by giving money back. But it indicates this governor is not about building a big budget. He's not about growing state government. When we have windfalls as a result of prices going up and we're collecting more sales tax, he's offered that back, and he's done that with about $75 million in gas tax and another $20 million in natural gas tax, and it goes right back to the people. So we're happy about this offering, and we'll move it right away.
Senator Williams also said Senate Republicans will, among other things, push for eminent domain legislation and revising the GOP voter ID bill. The Senate's Democrat caucus chair, Senator Tim Golden, is opposed to the voter ID legislation, saying it would make it harder for many Georgians to vote. Golden says more attention needs to be paid to issues like health care.
Quite frankly, I want to see us do some things related to the state merit health insurance plan. I hope that we'll make some adjustments in that plan. I'm not pleased where we're going with it at the present time. I think it's hurting state employees and teachers, and needs to be a better way to deal with the state health benefit plan. And also I want to see teachers receive some kind of decent pay increase this year, particularly in light of the fact, as I just mentioned, health insurance, which have gone up double-digit, yet pay raises have been very small in the past few years, if at all.
And Senator Golden says Senate Democrats will be announcing their legislative agenda in the near future.
Well, for those of you with access to the Internet, you can watch Lawmakers online. Visit our website at gpb.org for more information. Click on Watch Online and follow the instructions for watching live or looking at past Lawmakers programs in that archive. Now, that website address again is gpb.org. It's just another way we keep you apprised of what's going on here at the General Assembly.
And we'd like to recommend another website that's a valuable resource for information about the Georgia General Assembly. Go to www.dotligis.state.ga.us. That website's a great research tool we at Lawmakers use on a regular basis.
Well, although the House business today was mostly ceremonial, there was one point of contention when Representative Bob Holmes spoke out about a news report that quoted House Majority Leader Jerry Keene as saying that this session would proceed much as the last. Representative Holmes said that last year's General Assembly featured a lockout of House Democrats.
Last session, what we had, unfortunately, was getting the first day with the rules, a failure to recognize the rights of the minority to speak. We had the minority leader not being recognized as speaker to offer amendments. And even later in the session, we had a situation with regard to the appropriations bill in which we were not allowed to offer amendment. And in 31 years I've been here, that has never happened. I recognize that when you make decisions about committee assignments or things of this nature, that's fine. That's your prerogative. But I think that in order for us to represent our constituencies, that we need to have a right to speak.
Now, at a press conference after adjournment, House leadership, including Representative Keene, said that Representative Holmes' assertion lacks any validity.
Well, I didn't hear Representative Holmes' remark. I actually went in to get a banana. I needed the potassium this morning more than I needed his comments. But I would say that he made those comments, as someone told me later what he said, from the well of the House. So it's sort of confusing to me if you have access to the well of the House and morning orders to go down and really talk about anything you want to talk about, how you could say you don't have the ability to speak. But perhaps Representative Holmes is still having trouble adjusting to the fact that his party is still in the minority, and therefore you don't have the votes required to move along the issues that maybe he's interested in. But that's the process that's been here forever, and the process that will probably be here way past all of us.
Well, citizens and lawmakers alike are waiting to see exactly what will be in Governor Perdue's 06 amended budget. He gave a sneak peek last week when he pledged $234 million to repair and maintain local roads. The money will be split over 2 years and will come from an unexpected surplus in the state's motor fuel tax this past year.
Today, I'm proud to announce a new initiative to help local governments complete overdue maintenance and resurfacing projects, and because it's local roads that drivers and their families use most, we're calling this initiative Paving the Way Home. My budget is going to provide, recommended this year for the 06 and 07, $234 million for Paving the Way Home over 2 years to provide funding in all 159 counties.
Well, many state and local officials were on hand for the announcement last Thursday. The president of the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia joined those leaders in thanking the governor for putting this money into his budget.
The governor promised us 3 years ago when we came to him with our needs on paving and infrastructure. He told us money was tight, but when money got loose, he'd be back to us, and he's lived up to his promise.
According to the governor's office, the state experienced the surplus in the gas tax because of increased population and business in the state due in part to Hurricane Katrina. The governor is expected to unveil his plans for this year's amended budget as early as Wednesday. Since it's a budget bill, it will originate on the House side.
Legislation aimed to toughen sentences for convicted child molesters and a bill that would allow courts to try juveniles as adults for specific crimes are two of the issues expected to surface this session. Lawmakers David Zelsky has more.
Georgia Republican leadership says passing a law against convicted sex offenders who assault children is one of their top priorities.
Strengthen our laws in Georgia to make sure that we have the toughest bill in the country, or as tough as we can have.
House Majority Leader Jerry Keene sponsors legislation with three main components. First, they would impose a minimum sentence of 25 years for a person convicted of aggravated child molestation. Second, it prohibits a registered sex offender from working within 1,000 feet of any area where children congregate, like a school or a daycare center. And third, it requires the most dangerous sex offenders to wear tracking devices for the rest of their lives.
Florida, for example, passed a very sweeping reform in what they've called Jessica's Law, and they passed theirs last April after we had left session. I've looked at their bill, and it's very strong, electronic monitoring for lifetime. What we don't want is those people moving north to Georgia. We want them to, if they're going to leave Florida, to pass through Georgia and go to another state and not reside here.
Okay. Senator Bill Hamrick has been working on juvenile justice legislation since April of 2004 in response to the murder of 8-year-old Amy Yates.
We're working with the district attorney and researching the law and putting together a study committee to find out whether Georgia's prepared to handle situations where a 12-year-old commits murder seemingly intentionally.
Senator Hamrick and other legislators met numerous times since last April and understand this is a sensitive issue.
You want to give a 12-year-old child a chance to turn their life around at that age, or any other child that young. So the key is to find, the right balance give them a chance and to also meet your obligation to protect people. And so it's been a struggle to really find the best place to kind of come down on that, and we're getting close, but we're still working on it.
Amy Yates' parents attended every study committee meeting that Senator Hamrick held. Representative Tim Bearden of Villa Rica has also been very involved in working with the Yates family and finding the right piece of legislation. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm David Zelski.
In other news, the House Judiciary Committee heard testimony this afternoon on eminent domain legislation. Several members recommended bills they believe would protect property owners from the unfair use of eminent domain. Some committee members said that a bill that is too restrictive, however, would prevent cities from building schools and hospitals. All those testifying agreed that the government should not have absolute control to seize anyone's property.
First of all, the Constitution recognizing that the primacy of the individual in property and individual property rights. You know, if we don't observe that, none of the rest of it makes any difference. And, you know, then it's just a matter of, you know, who's got the power and who's got the money.
I've got a picture of what one city in Georgia calls a slum. Do we have to define what slum and blighted is? Is that what we have to do?
Farms are very tempting to take under eminent domain and put up nice strip malls or whatever else they need.
I'm not against eminent domain. I'm not against using property for public use. What I am against is when personal property rights are infringed on and you take away somebody's livelihood, somebody's business, somebody's recreation, somebody's whatever for use for something that is not a public use.
House Judiciary Chairman Wendell Willard held up an eminent domain bill in committee last year to wait for a Supreme Court decision. The High Court decided that states have the right to seize land for economic development, but that decision allows for state legislatures to make their own laws, of course, concerning eminent domain. Chairman Willard says the committee will review all the facts brought to the committee as the session progresses.
Coming up tomorrow on Lawmakers, highlights from the Georgia Chamber of Commerce's annual Eggs and Issues breakfast. Lawmakers David Zelski will have that story, and a session preview with Tom Crawford of CapitolImpact.com. Be sure to join us for those stories and more tomorrow on Lawmakers. And coming up this Wednesday, be sure to join us online for a live webcast of Governor Sonny Perdue's 4th State of the State address at 3 p.m. That webcast can be accessed through our website at www.gpb.org. We'll broadcast the State of the State in its entirety on a special 1-hour edition of Lawmakers Wednesday at 7 p.m. Well, we're coming up now on Antiques Roadshow, coming up next year on GPB. We made it through the first day of this session.
And Nwandi, I think we hit on most of the key issues: eminent domain, voter ID, education, immigration, allow those to be hotly debated. And the legislature is saying, most of them, that they're hoping to get out in fewer than 40 days. I've heard estimates as low as 35, so we might have a short session this year.
Absolutely. Well, we'll stay tuned to find out what happens.
And that is our broadcast for this, the first legislative day of the Georgia General Assembly. I'm Gerald Bryant. Thanks for watching.
And I'm Nwandi Lawson. Good night.
This has been a production of Georgia Public Broadcasting.